an American classic that still packs punch. Classic movies. Sweet Smell of Success, 1957. Starring Burt Lancaster, Tony Curtis, Susan Harrison, Martin Milner. Director, Alexander McKendrick.
Although it was not a box office success at the time, this bleak film noir is nevertheless nowadays recognised as a classic of American cinema. In fact, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. The film centres on the Faustian relationship between Burt Lancaster as vicious Broadway columnist J.J. Hunsaker and Tony Curtis as Sidney Falco, the sycophantic press agent living on crumbs from the omnipotent Hunsaker's table. Lancaster's relationship with his sister Susan Harrison, reeks of a repressed incestuousness and provides the plot impetus for the Devil's Pact at the heart of the storyline. The film begins with Sidney's despair at being frozen out of Hunsaker's gossip column because he has failed to bring about the promised end of Susan's romance with rising jazz musician Steve Dallas, played by Martin Milner, remember TV's Route 66 or Adam 12. Willing to prove his utter loyalty, or should we say craven submission, Sidney agrees to set up the hapless musician by arranging for a rival columnist to hint that Steve is a communist who smokes marijuana. He achieves this calumny by calling in favours, which is a nice way of saying he bribes the columnist by blackmailing a cigarette girl to prostitute herself for him in order to keep her job. As I say, this film is bleak. There are no heroes anywhere in Sweet Smell of Success. How they thought to make it into a musical decades later is beyond me. It is said that film noir is the American version of Greek tragedy, and that was never more obvious than in this film. The power that the character Hunsaker has, with his syndicated gossip column and daily radio show, is positively godlike. He makes and breaks careers and indeed lives at a whim, and he is obviously not averse to using this power for personal gain or convenience. Lancaster plays him with an icy detachment, not exactly unemotional. It's just that his range of emotions is all negative. Any enjoyment in his life comes from the pain of others. Tony Curtis, in the acting role of his life, he uses his pretty boy looks as a tool. Hunsaker's trained thuggish policeman, Lieutenant Kello, also swirling in the great man's wake, describes Sidney as having an ice cream face. I'm not quite sure what he meant, but it somehow accurately describes the way Sidney's readiness to do even the most vicious act to further his own ends belies his angelic looks and turns sweet into sickly. Also, there's something not quite wholesome in the way that Hunsaker looks at Sidney and enjoys having him close. Gazing at him, he says, "I'd hate to take a bite out of you. You're a cookie full of arsenic." And the oft-quoted line from this film, "Match me, Sidney," said without even looking around, just holding up a cigarette and knowing Sidney will be there. The lovers, young musician Steve and the teenage Susan, each a boringly normal everyman, are pawns in Hunsaker's game. The film wastes little time on the two, concentrating on the unsavoury dance of the Machiavellian columnist and his thrall. Crisp, sharp photography by James Wong Howe, together with a cool, jazzy Elmer Bernstein score, bring us together with the Greek chorus of bit players, the sophisticated city dwellers of the streets and jazz clubs of Manhattan. Sweet Smell of Success is so evocative of the Manhattan in that moment in time, it's hard to believe the film's director was Scottish, Alexander McKendrick, whose previous work in Britain included whimsical films like The Lady Killers and The Man in the White Suit. The ruse to discredit Steve does not work, and the romance continues despite Sidney's blackmailing effort, so Hunsaker devises an even more venomous plot that he expects Sidney to carry out by planting actual marijuana on Steve, to be duly uncovered by Lieutenant Kello. Steve's career and life will be ruined. But Sidney at last reaches his limit, and he refuses to do such a vile thing. "I'll wear a dog collar, but I won't wear a noose," he spits. So Hunsaker offers him the deal. "If you do this one thing, then I will give you my whole column, the radio show, everything, for 3 months, while I take my sister to Europe to recover. You can be God." And things unfold from there exactly the way you would expect. The whole thing about Greek tragedy is that everything is foregone. There is only one end, and there will be no winners. Which is scary because of how relevant Sweet Smell of Success seems today, when we're seeing people who know better grovel to prove their loyalty to power, just the way Sydney dutifully jumps to light Hunsaker's cigarettes.
This article was written and read by Judy Dungy.